Welcome back to another UNC Tar Heels basketball podcast, a Final Four version of the basketball podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. If you're watching us on our extremely fast-growing YouTube channel, that is called Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI publisher Andrew Jones, home too long ago from Philadelphia, heading out real soon to Louisiana, New Orleans, Superdome, site of the Final Four this weekend, where North Carolina will take on Duke. Our very own David Sisk, longtime AAU coach, college coach, and high school coach, joining me to discuss all things Carolina basketball. We're going to do two podcasts here tonight. We're going to split them up. First one, we're going to talk about Carolina and how the Tar Heels got here, what the Tar Heels have been doing differently in the last 5 weeks, David's professional opinion on that. If you have not seen David's film studies and film reviews, you need to, and you also need to be a premium subscriber. It's just $8.33 a month, guys. Go ahead and sign up right now. Go over to TarHeelIllustrated.com, sign up. You can get all of David's brilliance because he only gives so much here on the podcast. There's a lot more in print. And now's the greatest time you could possibly imagine doing that with the biggest game in Final Four semifinal history, I think, probably coming up this weekend. David, the Tar Heels, I wouldn't say they ran roughshod through the East region, but at times they did. They blew out Marquette. They had a 25-point lead on Baylor. They closed strong against UCLA, defensively shutting out Juzang and Jaquez, and neither one scored the last 10 minutes. And then they put an end to Cinderella's run on Sunday evening. My take very quickly, I think Carolina has played its best basketball the last couple of weeks, obviously, but they do not look like an 8 seed. They look like a 1 or a 2 seed. They look like a team that can win the national championship. So why have the Tar Heels made this meteoric jump in the last few weeks?
It's interesting the way you put it. I ran into one of my ex-high school players today, and the only time he's seen North Carolina play all year has been the NCAA tournament, and he thinks that they'll beat Duke by about 25. So he's watched them, and he thinks this may be the greatest North Carolina team ever from what he's seen the last few weeks. But they have clicked, for anybody that's watched them play outside of the full court press by Baylor. I mean, they've just run roughshod through everybody. So they're on, man. And there's so many things that you could attribute it to. Roster, and we've talked about all this stuff before. I think just finding the roster and Hubert saying, okay, this is my lineup. This is who I'm going to stick with. Because if you look at I'd read somewhere as far as analytics go that and I don't remember exactly what the stat was, but as far as a starting 5 goes, this was the most effective starting 5 in the country. And they play that group pretty much the whole game. Defense is better. I've kind of watched in the NCAA tournament when they don't give up points. Is it because is the other offense bad? Are they just having a bad shooting night? Any of that. And North Carolina has really played a lot tougher defense, what I've noticed in the tournament, because I've been looking for flaws in it. And they played tough. I mean, they've battled, they've competed, their scheme has been good, their fundamentals defensively has been good, but offensively, it's just guys getting hot at the right time. We talked about, wonder what would happen if Baycott and Manick and Caleb Love all of them got hot together instead of one guy at a time, like it's happened a lot this year. One guy'd have a bad game, but the other guy'd score 25 or 30. And then the bad guy that had the bad game the next night, he's on, but the other guy's off. And, we've discussed this, like I said, everybody they're on right now. You expect just about every one of those guys between the big four offensively that when they take shots, it's going to go in. So, that's a heck of a feeling to have.
Brady Manick had 28 against Marquette. The next day, 2 days later, he had 26 and 28 minutes against Baylor, but R.J. Davis went for 30. Caleb Love went for 30 Friday night, 27 in the second half. 1 3 he hit Hubert Davis is like, oh no. He literally, as we're sitting right behind Hubert, put his hands up to his head like, no. And the thing went in. That was the kind of night Caleb had. And then Sunday was Armando doing what he does, not just the points, but gobbling up rebounds like Pac-Man, just gobbling up all those pellets. A board comes down and he just swallows that thing whole in his arms. You know, the one night this year that all those guys did go off, and then we're not going to do a Duke preview or anything like that. They had all four that went for 20 plus in Cameron. And that's what it took to win that game, along with defensively in the second half. And I want to start more with the defense. At halftime, Hubert just told those guys to guard 1 through 5. 1 guard the 1, 2 guard the 2, 3 guard the 3. He simplified things. He just do your job, guard the guy. And I think when they started doing that, you tell me if I'm wrong, it looks like they're icing better. It looks like they're getting around screens better, and they're choosing when to switch and when not to switch. The best switch of the year occurred Friday night, and that was late in the game. Armando got caught in a switch and was on Tiger Campbell. And Tiger's pounding that thing on the ground. He was having a good game. He's like, I'm going to take him to the basket. I'm going to drive on him. I'm going to score, at least draw a foul. He tried to, and Armando cut him off, didn't let him get into the lane. He ended up forcing a travel. That was enormous because UCLA was up 1 on that possession and pretty late. And that was a defensive stop. And it wasn't much longer later after that when Armando had that great save, flicking the thing out to Caleb, who hit the game tying 3 at 64-64. Also in that game, Juzang and Jaquez did not score the last 10 minutes. And guess who was on Jaquez? Brady Manick. Guess who was on Paulo Banchero in the second half in Durham, shutting him down? Brady Manick. Everyone talks about Brady's catch and shoot. And I heard national people in Philly this past weekend, seeing him for the first time in person, saying, and I'm quoting one guy, oh my God, that's the quickest release I've ever seen. Someone who's been around the game for a long time. But he can pass. He had 8 rebounds in each of the games in Philadelphia. He had 11 boards in the game against Marquette, the game against Marquette. So he's rebounding, he's passing, he's scoring, and now he's defending. And I think the reason this club's a much better team is it appears right now there's no weakness defensively when those 5 are on the floor. They're all getting the job done.
I agree. And they had a good scheme yesterday against St. Peter's. And the reason I think about it, you were talking about the icing. And I was thinking, okay, what's Hubert going to do defensively against this team? Because, if you saw the film review and all that, we really just basically focused a lot on St. Peter's attacking with a dribble from the top of the key and running this clock down and then get space and going from the top. Well, he iced them, the ball screens. So they're only outside, and the thing is they're running a lot of 4 out. So they're not starting in the middle of the floor. They're starting on the side, and then they try to ball screen or hand off weak, whatever. Well, as soon as they can't brought the ball down the side, they're just icing them and forcing the sideline. So I thought that was a very good call right there to try to just keep that ball from getting to the middle so easily where they could start weaving and high ball screening and all that stuff. And they executed it well. So, in the same way, the UCLA game just really, they made UCLA work. And, UCLA is so good in that mid-range game. Get in there and Jaquez and Johnny Juzang and all those guys, are really, really good. But they defended well. They've been defending well. You go back to earlier in the year and you're trying to think with Hubert, he tried everything. And there's more drop coverage now. They're icing more. That's one thing he did, but they'll still drop coverage, go over the ball screen. But he was trying to get them up. He was trying to switch. He finally found something that worked. So, and like I said, I just give him credit because he never stopped coaching. He tried everything. He kept working. He kept trying to find stuff, and finally he's found what clicks.
The thing that really impressed me about St. Peter's, I think St. Peter's was a fascinating challenge for them because it's a hot team, a supremely competent team, but they didn't face anybody this year stylistically like them. Not really at all. And they make sure those 4 guards get touches. But I thought what Carolina did, the icing, they forced them to the side, but they also denied. They extended their off-ball man defense on the perimeter more than they had earlier this year. There was one sequence that stands out that Caleb was in denial, like 30 feet from the basket. They weren't going to let them run their stuff because if the guards couldn't do anything, nothing else was going to work. So even when St. Peter's got a few open shots early, they weren't the usual shots they get. So it's no surprise they didn't shoot a very high percentage. And I asked Caleb about that denial and denying far away from the basket. I asked both he and RJ. RJ just said, well, we were just doing our principles. This is what we were told to do in this game. Caleb made a really interesting comment. He said, we know that we could denial back there because we trust the guys behind us. We trust that help side will be there. And I thought that was interesting because Hubert maybe wanted to extend a little bit more pressure in the half court earlier this year, but you can't do it if you don't trust the help defense. If you don't trust the communication between the five, if they're not playing one guy on one in five separate battles, it's a man-to-man defense playing as a unit of five. And Caleb said, we trust each other now. I know that if I get beat, if I'm denying and that guy jabs and gets by me, there's help back there. They're going to help me out because we're doing this together. That wasn't the case earlier this year. They were a terrible help side defense team earlier in the season, but it's there now. And that's why they were able to extend that defense on the perimeter.
And I noticed the second half, St. Pete they got into the lane a little bit more in the second half. And that happens throughout the game. Defense gets tired and things. But they kicked out to the wing, and even when they were down 20-25, they never took three-pointers. So you're in there to help, and you're closing out. They've actually got the look to take the three-pointers, and they never took them. They're putting the ball on the floor. Yeah. And I thought that was interesting. It showed their lack of confidence in that. But they're putting the ball on the floor, and you talk about the help side. They dribble into the lane, and how many times did the guards get into there at the rim, and they couldn't get a shot off over Baycott or Manic, either one. Yeah. I mean, they were blocking shots. They were protecting the rim. They were impacting shots, impacting misses. So that was one thing that was very, very, I thought, impressive, with that help side defense. And it's gotten better, like you said, all year long. You can see guys kind of sold in on that, guys packing the lane and then going in hard closeouts.
I'm gonna give a couple of examples of something that they've done in the tournament, and you tell me what you think this means. Marquette, they just put their foot on the throat early and just blew the doors off them. I mean, that was killer instinct out of the gate, which we saw occasionally from this team. But remember back in January when they did that to NC State, and we did a podcast a couple of days later, and you're like, yeah, they hit shots, but they didn't play great. Against Marquette, they hit shots, but they played really, really well. They did so many things well in that game. Baylor, okay, they're up 25. They did a lot of wonderful things to get to that point, but I knew Hubert was only going to show them the last 10 minutes of regulation and overtime. And what I want to focus on here, the dot I'm connecting goes to overtime. After blowing that lead, the way they were able to regroup in overtime and grit that thing out. Then let's go to Friday night against UCLA, 12-2 run to close the game. They close out a club that was in the Final Four last year. They close out a club that some people thought was the best team in college basketball at the start of the season. And a lot of people picked to win that region even before Kentucky went down and before Purdue went down. A lot of people had UCLA, getting through to New Orleans. And then Sunday, in a game that I watched Purdue right in front of me, David. They were very challenged by the idea of dealing with how pesky and not like St. Peter's was. They never figured it out. Carolina said, we're not going to make that an issue. They had that big 15-2 run, went up 27-9, and then they came out at the start of the second half, had a 9-1 run to open the half. They went up 27, and the game was over. And St. Peter's did respond with a 13-4 run. If Carolina doesn't open the second half that way and St. Peter's gives that run, suddenly the Tar Heels could get tight. But they showed me something. The way they blew the doors off, had the killer mistake against Marquette. The way they responded to blowing that lead against Baylor. How they closed 12-2 on UCLA, basically making Tiger Campbell their only offensive weapon. And then the way they just took the heart out of Cinderella on Sunday. What does that tell you about this team?
Well, there's no doubt. They marched through the region. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I don't even go back on Baylor and really think about those last 10 minutes because I'm gonna be honest. I think it was kind of flukish because you got two players that are out of the game, when you've got 5 that they depend on, it's a big deal. If you're 11, 12 deep, there's no difference in your 12 guy and your 1 guy. It's not a big issue. But it tells you a lot of how important every player is on this team that's playing out there, because you've got to have them. And if one's down, that makes it tough. So it's important that they don't get in foul trouble, that there's not injuries, that there's not something silly happens where we're getting, ejected from a game. All that's really important. But yes, I mean, they have been, in my opinion, very, very impressive. They've seen different kind of styles. And we've kind of looked at that, of what each team does, what they did and how they were different. So they came through in all those. And I think the thing all together is that defensively, they've improved. They're playing as a unit. But offensively, man, they're just clicking. They're playing together. And it's not like you've got 5 guys out there who just are scorers. They relate to each other so well. They complement's the word I'm trying to think of. They complement each other so well. I mean, Manick and Baycott are the perfect 4-5. They are the perfect 4-5, and that's not always an easy thing to do. You can find you a stretch guy, but he may not be able to guard. He may not be physical. You talked about Manick playing defense, but he steps out and shoots, and that gives Baycott a lot of room in there. He's hard to double. Leakey's your defensive stopper, but when you've got shooters around at 6'8", he can really put the ball on the floor and get to the rim. That draws the defense. Then you kick the shooters. RJ's setting the table now at the point guard, but he can make shots. And then you've got Caleb Love, who's just like the ultimate microwave. And I look, going 1 for 8 in the first half in a game against UCLA, 1 for 9 rather, makes his first shot, misses 8 in a row, and then scores 27 in the second half. That's nuts. But that's what they're all doing. So, every player is writing a chapter of this story, and I think that's the neat thing.
We had breakout rooms on Saturday. One of the great things about the Elite Eight is they'll take the 5 starters and they each get their own room, and you got to spend a little time with them in addition to the press conference today. And it's good now because we don't have locker room access yet. We'll probably get it next year. So the breakout rooms was an opportunity to get a little bit closer, a little bit more one-on-one type stuff. And there were two themes that I kind of went in there trying to get stuff from. We won't talk about the Caleb one because we actually talked about a little bit about that last week. But another one was asking about why there were some struggles earlier because they were trying to get the chemistry going. And there were 2 factors that played into why it took a while to get the chemistry going. Number one was the Dawson Garcia factor. Before he left, they're trying to figure out how to work 2 stretch 4s in there that are very uniquely different. And that was challenging. The other thing is, once he did leave, they still had 4 very unique scorers on the court. And they had to learn how to play together. It's one thing to say you compliment someone because you have different skills, but then you have to learn how to play together and then have the other guys play with you as well. And all of them, Caleb, Armando, and RJ, the 3 that I talked about, they all said it took a while because they're so different. Because Caleb is more effective doing this. RJ is more effective doing that. Brady's more effective doing that. And I think that they believe that the X factor is Brady here because you look at the Final Four, really look at the tournament. Who else has a guy like that? There aren't many of them out there. So it's kind of hard to guard a guy like that. And he's showing now that he could post. He's got a really good baseline game. He moves very well without the ball. He gets a couple of cutting on the baseline buckets every game. So you can't lose him. You can't fall asleep and say, I'm just going to stay out here and guard this guy. He starts in the corner, but he can end up anywhere on the floor and score. And the players are now, his teammates are used to him being that guy now. There are a lot more assists attached to his baskets now than there were in January.
Yeah, and Sunday was my daughter's birthday, so we actually watched a game from her house while everybody was cooking. And my brother-in-law was there, and he knows some basketball. He's not a basketball fan. He's a big Tennessee fan, and he says if it meant that they could have a 1-2 10-win football season at the University of Tennessee, he would be all for canceling the basketball program. He'd be willing to swap that one out. But he knows who Brady Manick is. I said it to say that. Everybody in there, from little old ladies to kids, knew who Brady Manick was. And because he's got obviously the different look with a beard and a headband and all that stuff. But, man, he's become a kind of a legendary college player. And to me, that's the beauty. It used to be the beauty of college basketball when it was when you could compare it. There was a time you could compare it to college football. You could compare it to the NBA and even the NFL. It was a huge deal because you had players staying 3 and 4 years, and, man, they were so marketable. I mean, you talk about, at North Carolina, the Worthies and the Perkins and Phil Ford and guys like that, and then an Isaiah Thomas and in Indiana, or just Christian Leitner or somebody like that. You can go and talk about guys like that forever. And Brady's kind of got that, and you've seen those players in North Carolina. They're on the floor all the time. Like we said, they don't go into the bench a whole lot. And North Carolina is such a brand that, man, I couldn't imagine if Manick had gone pro after last year, that it would have been any better for him than what it's been. And the thing is, it's not him showing up cashing a check. It's him playing basketball. I mean, he's earned everything he's gotten. He has played incredibly well. And if you're like me, you expect every time the ball leaves his hands that it is going in the bucket. It's like when it doesn't go in, you're like, what in the world happened? I mean,
some of the other media that I talked to there, they didn't ask about Armando. They didn't ask about Caleb or RJ. They asked about 2 people. They asked about Brady and they asked about Hubert. All that I talked to. And when Carolina, there were open practices to the media the first 15 minutes, all of them were over where Brady was, where he was stretching. Yeah. And then wherever Brady went, people were just kind of, that kind of stuff. And I noticed that on Twitter. I go down to the court. I do it for every game. I go down and I shoot photos. We can't post warm-up videos during the NCAA tournament. We can post photos, and go look at the numbers. Look at the likes and retweets on the Brady photos and compared to everybody else. He's become a rock star. Yeah. And I think that I hope someday I can get access and just kind of really hear him tell the story, because a lot of this has come on quickly. For a lot of this season, he was, I think, trying to assimilate and be a guy that made sense to have those words in the front of his jersey, because I think that's really, really important to him. That's why he chose to go there. He could have gone overseas and made a lot of money, but he wanted to have that experience. It was an opportunity that he couldn't pass up. But he and they weren't really having that experience for a while. He had games, they had games, but then not. And what's happened here in the last 2 months after Dawson left was like, Brady, you're the guy. You don't need to look over your shoulder anymore, because you're going to get 35 minutes a night. And these guys are going to get used to playing with you. And when all that happens, your strengths will be accentuated, and more have come out, like I was talking about with the assist numbers, the rebounding numbers, his defense, everything has popped. A couple of guys I talked to this weekend that don't cover him said that's the one surefire NBA guy on that team right now, which I thought was interesting because they saw him play great defense. Carolina fans might say, wait a minute, I saw Brady earlier in the year, he wasn't playing great defense. But when I talked to Hubert Davis a few weeks ago, I had a one-on-one. It was about Armando Bacot. One of the things that Hubert emphasized, said, look, being in the NBA isn't about being the most talented basketball player sometimes. He said it's about having an elite skill, something that you do at an elite level that is needed. And Brady is an elite shooter for a 6'9", 6'10" guy with that quick of a release, the ability to get open the way that he does. That's an elite skill. And it would not surprise me if he has made himself into an NBA player at North Carolina, just like a guy named Cam Johnson did in his 2 years at Chapel Hill as well.
Yes. And when I'm looking down here, I'm searching for a name right now that escapes me that I want to compare him to. stretch guy that the Houston Rockets used to have about 5 or 6 years ago. But Ryan Anderson.
Yeah.
And he's kind of got some of that in him. Just if you can, at that size, at 6'10", like you say, that skill set, shoot the ball as accurately as he does at his size, you absolutely, I think, have a place in the league. And it may be originally a two-way deal coming in, but there's a lot of guys, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he doesn't sneak in the draft. But even if he doesn't, I think they'll find – if he was 6'6", 6'7", it'd be a different story. Yeah. But those guys like that, man, that can shoot the way he can shoot and are 6'10", man, they find spots for him in the NBA. I'd bet the house on it, man, that he'll have a big role from years to come here in the National Basketball Association.
You know, he had a 3 blocked on Sunday, yesterday, which I didn't think that was possible at that level. And a guy from St. Peter's did it. And guess what happened 2 possessions later? He took him down low. Caleb fed him. And he did posted him up, got him on his hip, little jump hook. It's like, okay, I'm going to remind you that I'm 4 inches taller than you, and I could score on you anytime I want. You got me one time. I could score on you anytime I want. And then it wasn't that much longer after that when he had a catch and shoot 3. And it was just, I think he could have gone for 35 on Sunday. He had that kind of thing going, but they had so much going, and they weren't great they weren't great offensively, but they were good. They were really good in spurts, which is enough to build the kind of margin that they did. And I think that's what's so impressive is that offensively they weren't great in Philadelphia, which tells me that I think that there's a chance they could be great or very good offensively Saturday night in New Orleans.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on 2 things. While you're talking about that, you know, the Baylor game, I can't remember who was doing the color, if it's Jay Billis, I think it was. But, you know, when he threw that elbow, and right before that, he said if he would stay in the game the entire time, said he would score 40. So that, and 40 was the over and under number he used. I
think Billis said that on ESPN. The color guy in I think it was Jim. I think they had Jim Spanarkel both weekends. They had Jim Spanarkel both weekends.
And I know one of those guys said he was going to see.
Is a former Duke guy, right?
Yeah, but then you know, the other thing you're talking about playing when they didn't play well was against UCLA. You know, I go back to that UCLA game outside of Caleb Love. You know, Caleb Love wouldn't let them die in the second half, and he just kept. When they had to have a bucket, he made Vinnie Johnson look ordinary in that game. I mean, you know, he was the real microwave. You know, Caleb Love is. I mean, just the way he heated up. Like I said, made his first 3, missed his next 8 shots, scored 27 in the second half. So you look at that. Did Baycott play his best? No. Did Manick play his best? No. Did RJ play his best? No. Did Leakey play their best? No. But Caleb Love carried them. And, you know, you think about it, you know, it's not a stretch at all with saying UCLA's the Final Four team. I mean, they've got that type of talent. Yeah. And you beat UCLA on a night where you really probably had one guy play to his max.
5. They had their last 21 field goals against UCLA, only 5 were assisted. And they still won. See, that goes back to those narrow wins over Louisville and Clemson and stuff like that, where I've used this example 1,000 times. I'll do it again. They had that wagon. They started chucking some stuff on the wagon, accumulating. And as they did that, they were kind of building toward what they are now. And they couldn't have become what they are now without having gone through that part of the process. And part of it was just kind of winning ugly. And winning when not everything went your way. I think that earlier in the year, they were so skill-oriented that sometimes they didn't understand how to be effective when the skill was shut down a little bit or was slowed. But they've learned how to do that. And part of that were, to me, with those wins, learning how to do it, knowing, look, if Caleb's off, it's still okay because he still could hit big shots to help you win. He could still make plays. He could still pass the ball and get you in position to win. You know, RJ scores 30 against Baylor. RJ didn't score a lot in Philadelphia. He didn't care. And that's the thing. You've got high volume scoring dudes that don't care if they don't score as long as somebody is scoring. And I think that goes back to the chemistry and cohesion that Hubert's talked about. And I think it goes back to Brady Manick. These guys have accepted him fully. And there's a reason those kids put a net on him. The first net they cut down went around his neck last night. And I think that's important. That symbolizes something very, very important that you must have in that room if you're going to win a national championship. And I believe that they are positioning themselves to possibly do that. You and I thought they could be really good earlier in the year, but there were times when they weren't. We had to be straight up about that. But we knew that they had the parts to make a run. They just kind of had to bring some stuff together. And it's amazing to me that in the month of March, those things have come together. How much of that do you attribute to just simple chemistry? How much of it do you attribute to a change that Hubert made?
I think
just in the way he communicates and how because he seems different to me now than he was 2 months ago. And it's not because they're just winning. Like I think the simplification go ahead.
I remember you saying when times were tough, it was like he was coaching just like every play and every game to win. It was just like he was living and dying with every game. And, and I understand that. Man, I'm going to tell you what, that's the hardest seat you could ever sit in, being the head basketball coach at the University of North Carolina. So, yes, obviously he feels pressure. I mean, who wouldn't? But then as that happens, they start to win games. I think the Duke game, like we said, and I remember saying when they beat Duke now, I said he's a made man. Yeah. That I remember saying it specifically. I think it gave the team confidence. I think it really relieved a lot of pressure off Hubert Davis, once that happened. That, he belongs. And look, I'm not going to name names, but I've seen coaches who have been head coaches for 30 years under Hall of Fame type coaches who get a lot tighter in the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game than Hubert Davis gets. And I think that's one thing I was thinking the other day, with Caleb, and he said so that, Hubert's the right kind of coach for him. Yeah. But Hubert's been there, playing in the NBA and all that. And he might not have been the greatest player in North Carolina history, but he understands the psychology of a player. Whereas, you don't tighten him up. He's not yanking him when he misses shots. He's letting him play through it. And, he's the perfect kind of coach, like I said, for Caleb. And I just think his whole deal where he was a good player and played on such a high level, he understands. He knows what they're going through out there as players. He can relate to that. And he knows how to handle it.
With respect to the 3 minutes or so that he had those kids on the bench at the end of regulation against Baylor, and before he sent them out on the court, and 2 of those kids were Justin McCoy and Dontrez Styles. I asked Hubert in a press conference at Chapel Hill last Tuesday about the fact that he has spent so many years and so many times in his life, he has sat in one of those seats and he's listened to Dean Smith give direction. He's listened to Pat Riley give direction. He's listened to Don Nelson give direction. And as an assistant coach, he listened to Roy Williams give direction in those moments. And I asked him, I said, when you got in that situation, did you draw from that? Was there something maybe that one of them said that stuck with you and you're like, what, here's the perfect time to use that? Or were just all those natural experiences just kind of funneled through your words? And he did say that he remembered, how Coach Smith would loosen the team up with something and they would sometimes say something that would sort of get their mind off of that for a split second. And he did. And I also think and they came out and they played so well in the overtime period. Friday night against UCLA, Brady Manick was struggling in the second half. He got so ticked at himself one time, he ripped off his headband and he was hollering some pleasantries, very, very loud for people within the first 15 rows could hear. And Hubert took him out and told him a joke. He told us after the game that he told Brady a joke. But I'm like, coaches say stuff sometimes. Maybe he didn't. He's just saying that. Calipari would say something like that. Well, we told him a joke, but he didn't really tell him a joke. I actually found out he was told a joke. Hubert went and told him a joke to get his mind off it for a second and reset. A guy who's been through that as a player understands that. And Hubert said, look, when I was a player, if I'm sitting on the bench in that situation, or if I'm pulled out of a game and my coach is screaming and yelling at me and berating me, because that did not positively reinforce me at all. That didn't get me to play better. He said he responded to positive reinforcement. And that's what he does with his guys. Get the mind off it for a second, reset, pat on the fanny. You can do this, and go back in. And we saw how it worked at the end of the Baylor game, and we saw how it worked with Brady Manning, because he came back in, and his second shot was an enormous three-pointer in that game that I think settled the rest of the team down, because they're like, okay, we're not just relying on Caleb. If Brady needs to go off, we can get him the ball too.
I know from experience, if you're a shooter, you can't play tight. Yeah. And a lot of times people want to know, well, what's going on with a shooter? Why are they going through a slump? It's just, it's a confidence thing, but it's also a tightness thing. And like I said, I know from experience, when you feel like you're just going to squeeze a hole in the ball, as a shooter, nobody else knows it. Nobody else can tell it. Fans can't tell it. You may have no reaction when you miss a shot, but just you're so tight squeezing the ball, just the stress of it. It's like, they say, if you squeeze a golf club, and really squeeze it hard and tight, you'll lose 50 yards on your drive. Same way with shot. You just can't make it.
Baseball, you squeeze the bat, you drop your shoulder, you uppercut, and you miss the pitch.
And then you start thinking about, stuff, and then stats is in your head. Well, right now I'm 2 for 7. If I make it, I'm 3 for 8. If I miss it, all that stuff can start going through your head when you're doing everything mentally, but except playing loosely. So I like that with a shooter, like you say, telling them a joke, really just trying to loosen the guy up, because with Brady's skill set, he needs to be loose.
Before we close this thing out, staying on Hubert, what has impressed you the most about him as a coach? I'm sure you watch coaches differently than most people do. I coached youth league when I was like in high school and stuff, around my team. It was not really coaching. It was just roll the ball, let the kids play, right? But I'm not a coach. I'm a sports writer. You're a coach. You see things differently than other people do. What one thing has impressed you the most about Hubert Davis over the last couple of months?
Man, there's a lot of – I'm going to say a couple things, and I'll narrow it down to one.
What comes to your mind first? Let me say that. Then you can roll the other things out.
Well, I think at first, if I just look at it as a coach, I think he's a really good offensive mind. And I've said that.
You said that in November, by the way.
I just watch him. I think he's a tremendous offensive coach. So if I think about as a coach, that's going to come to mind 10 years from now. But the thing right now that sticks out to me is just how he coached through adversity. Yeah. That, to me right now, that's the big thing. And like I said, they just kept searching, and we'll forget about it again next January. You'll watch your teams play, and you'll say, well, this team's the best team in the country. And then they peaked in January, and by March, they're out in the first weekend. And this team's not any good. The next thing you know, they're in the Sweet 16, Elite 8.
Yep.
He never stopped coaching. He never stopped. He tinkered. He adjusted. He made moves. He looked for stuff. Changed things, changed how they were playing offense, changed the lineups, changed, defensively, changed what they were doing offensively some. Just not scared to do that. And like I said, we hear a lot of time coach speak when the coach says, hey, it's all about the process. Guys, let's just try to get better every day. And, media and fans and whoever will roll their eyes. But like I said it on the last podcast, there's something to that. And there's a beauty to that. So I would say the thing that sticks out to me right now is that Hubert Davis is a really good sausage maker.
Yeah.
So, he's right up there with Jimmy Dean right now. I mean, he can make the sausage. He to me looks like he really embraces the process.
He does. And he talks a lot about that. Okay. Last thing before we close out this podcast. In an era where men being publicly emotional is far more accepted than it would have been, a couple, 3-4 decades ago, whatever, it's certainly something we see more of now. What are your thoughts on the flow of emotion unleashed by Hubert Sunday evening? And I don't know if you've seen the press conference. If you haven't, the last two, I asked the next to last question about the program itself and, Dean and Guthridge and Roy and that kind of stuff. And then David Teal, brilliant writer for the Richmond Times-Dispatch, asked him, kind of zeroed in on Coach Guthridge and what Coach Guthridge means to him. And Hubert couldn't answer at first because he started getting emotional again. How much, since you cover recruiting for us, how much do you think that emotion, especially when it's totally genuine, will play on the recruiting trail?
I don't know. I really have not thought about it. I think this run is certainly going to help them on a recruiting trail because the blue blood status is not tainted.
Yeah.
Brand, there's no dim on the brand right now. So that's all there. And he can go into homes as just as, and he would have anyway, but there'll be a swagger going into homes now. With what they've been able to do. I think the emotion really probably sits really good with parents. Because I think it's a whole thing where just being genuine, and I think being genuine on a recruiting trail is huge anyway. I will say this about the kids. If you're not genuine, and you've heard this before, as an adult, if you're not genuine in yourself, young people can pick it out like that. And as you, I may not be a genuine guy and you may not notice it. A 15, 16-year-old kid will notice it.
Yeah.
You're rarely wrong about that. So it could be something that they notice. But like I said, I really just feel like I just keep hearing from parents how much they like Hubert the family man. Sergio Wilcher's told me that. Bishop Jackson's told me that. Just, when you start getting into the mom and the dads, the family man part of it, hey, we got to help raising our kids. Just because they're old enough to go to college don't mean we're done raising them. We got to send them to a guy that'll help us raise our kids. Man, all that just, fits in perfectly.
We're going to be loaded with Final Four stuff all week long. I'll be in New Orleans by Wednesday. There will be a media day stuff at the Superdome on Thursday, and then Friday's the real big media day and the open practices to the public. There'll be 40, 50,000 people at those practices. It'll be fascinating seeing Hubert out there. Always Roy Williams' favorite day when he had his team out there, because all the coaches convention takes place the weekend of the Final Four. And he loved when all the rest of the coaches are sitting in the stands and they're watching his team practicing at the Final Four. Hubert's going to have that opportunity. We will have that for you. We'll have a couple people from our staff in New Orleans covering that. And David's going to have a lot of stuff building up to it. We're going to have a ton of content that's premium and a lot that's not premium on our site. To access the premium stuff, it's just $8.33 a month for a 1-year subscription. That's like the price of a gallon of gas and a candy bar these days, the way prices are going. So make sure you hop on over to THI, sign up. Now's the time to do it, guys. It's not just with this, but recruiting. Gigi's making a decision pretty soon, and David has been inside that as much as you could possibly be in our profession. So make sure you're going over there. David, awesome stuff, my friend. Our next pod's going to be looking at the Duke Carolina game and what this means for college basketball. So if you haven't seen that one yet, wait for it. It'll be up soon after this one. He's David. I'm AJ. We appreciate you stopping by.